Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 question, 2 research reviews, and 3 actionable health tips, all centered around the Lifestyle First method, your blueprint for the 10 key routes of optimal health and happiness. And now, your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hi, hey, and hello. Welcome to Series 8, Episode 5. And the theme that we're focusing on today is S for sleep. And the 1 question that we're exploring is, how can you adjust your sleep to fit with shift work patterns? Now, to help answer that question, I have with me Dr. Lindsay Browning. Dr. Browning is a chartered psychologist and a neuroscientist, and she is the author of the fantastic book, Navigating Sleeplessness, and also the founder of Trouble Sleeping. So welcome, Lindsay. Really delighted to be speaking to you about sleep today. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So let's get going. So sleep really is the most natural, restorative, regenerating thing that we all do, isn't it? Or maybe I should rephrase that and say are supposed to do, because somehow I think we manage to sacrifice or sabotage and we lose all that synchronicity with our very natural rhythms. Now, your book, you open it with this title to your introduction, which says, "You are not alone." So maybe you can start by just telling us how big an issue actually is sleep.
Absolutely. It's a huge issue. So many people aren't getting enough sleep, the amount of sleep that they need to have. And there are sort of 2 reasons for that. One, people just aren't prioritizing it. And that's really common, especially historically. Sleep was seen as something weak, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But if you don't sleep, then you're going to be dead a lot sooner, to be fair. And the other half, or the other group, would be people who know sleep's really important for their overall health and well-being, but they just can't. No matter how they try, they can't fall asleep, or they can't stay asleep, or they sleep during the night, but they keep waking up, and they wake up feeling just like they had the worst night's sleep, and they feel so tired. So my job and what I want to do is to educate people why sleep is important and how much sleep you do need, and secondly, to help people who are really struggling to sleep to be able to fall asleep.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge issue, isn't it? We talk about pandemics and epidemics, but sleep certainly is an epidemic, and has been for quite a long time, hasn't it? And as you say, it's that sense of this, we're living in a 24/7 society as well, and there are so many sort of external pressures on us as well to do more and be more, and the idea of there never being enough time. So what shall I give up? I'll just give up my sleep. It's okay. But I think, a big group of people, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because a big group of people that do struggle with sleep are those that work shift patterns. So if you think about the workforce and think about doctors, emergency services, I can think of pilots, cab drivers, lorry drivers, even parents of newborns, they're working shift patterns, aren't they, when they're nurturing their little ones? So that's a group that really does struggle with sleep. What are the sort of hazards, shall we call them, or the consequences of shift work that you found in your work?
Sure. Well, people who work shifts tend to sleep significantly less than people who don't work shifts. I think it's something like they lose 2 hours on average. Please don't quote me on that because I didn't look it up just now, but I think it's something like that people who work shifts are every single day losing out on sleep, which obviously has a huge difficulty with their health. But also, when people work shifts, it's not just the fact they're not getting enough sleep, but also the quality of their sleep. They can start to struggle to fall asleep. They can have issues because they know they have to fall asleep now because they've got to go and wake up at 10 o'clock to go to work. They can really struggle to be able to sleep. And they'll eat at odd times. So because you're awake during the night shift, you'll be eating when actually your body and your digestive system is supposed to be not working. We're not designed to digest food in the middle of the night. And yet when you work shifts, you have to eat during the night because that's when you're working your shift. And that can mean that people who work shifts can have a lot of digestive issues. It's very common to have digestive upset because you're eating at the wrong times, basically. And there's loads and loads of evidence to show that working shifts can be very damaging for your health overall. So it's important that people understand the potential hazards and that they do something about it, because there's lots of things you can do to improve your sleep even when you are working shifts.
Yeah, that sort of idea of rest and digest, which is what we're supposed to do when we're in that kind of calmer state. As you say, you get distracted from that when you're working shifts, certainly because your natural rhythms are really not in sync. And yeah, I certainly also see a lot more digestive issues, just stomach upset, ulcers, indigestion, constipation, irritable bowel, which then also connects with some of the stresses associated with that shift in sleeping patterns as well. And the stress even on things like relationships and how that then affects your mood because of your sleep patterns as well. Just going back to digestion then, of course, that then links into weight as well, doesn't it? And we know that, again, from quite a lot of research, that people who do work shift patterns also have issues with increased weight gain and more difficulty losing weight as well. But I wonder what the role of perhaps employers is here. Do you think there's a role for the working environment in terms of supporting shift workers, particularly in that area of digestion and weight gain and connection to food and eating?
Definitely. So I do a lot of work with different companies who have employees who do shifts, and providing good quality food during night shift is really important, because if you're working in a utility company, or you're working in a call center, or when you're manning operations during the night, often the only food that you can get is from a vending machine, or if you're out driving out and about, you're an ambulance driver, the petrol station, when they're not, completely stocked with people who are struggling to get petrol in the current crisis. But the things that you can buy in a petrol station are chocolate bars, or they're pastries, or they're not good quality, healthy foods. And that's really, really difficult. So employers can provide, if possible, healthy eating. Have complex carbohydrate is a brilliant thing to have when you are during the night shift, because it gives you slow release energy. So rather than just chocolate bars in the vending machine, maybe have flapjacks, or the slow release carbohydrate foods, fresh fruit. Maybe just provide a bowl of fresh fruit in the overnight office, because that's going to be really helpful. And water. Keeping hydrated with water is really, really important. And just also some education, just something as simple as a PDF sent out to your employees, just giving some basics of how best to manage your sleep and your lifestyle whilst doing shifts would be really helpful as well.
Yeah. And I think you're right. There is responsibility, isn't there? There's responsibility on employers' part, and there's responsibility for the employee as well. And it does need that organisational change, that change in culture, doesn't it? I mean, I look back to my days as a junior doctor, and in hospitals, the canteens are probably the worst example of healthy food that you can imagine. And this is in a caring environment where we're supposed to be caring for the nation, really. So there is a real kind of disconnect there, isn't there? And I think you're absolutely right. If we can start to get these messages out about how important this is, just in terms of maintaining the health of your workforce, it's every organisation's responsibility, isn't it, as well? So, so what about then shifting perhaps to the individual? There you are, you've done your night shift, you're on your way home. How can you, back to that initial question, how can you start to resync your sleeping patterns with your shift work? What are some of the things that we can do?
Sure. We have a thing called our circadian rhythm, which helps us to be awake during the day and produce melatonin and be sleepy at night. And naturally, if we are in the UK, then our circadian rhythm is in a particular time zone. And you might have realized, if you've gone abroad, you go to America, you go to Asia, your circadian rhythm is in the different time zone from the country that you visited. And then you'll feel sleepy when everyone else is getting up for the morning. When you're working shifts, it's almost like you've taken yourself to another country, to Australia, and you're in a completely different time zone. Now, what regulates our circadian rhythm, how we can tweak it, is primarily through light. And our body is designed that when we see light, our brains, we have a separate neural pathway the eyes can see vision, so you can see me now, but also have a separate neural pathway whose sole job is to measure light levels throughout the day. And when we see the most light or the most lux of the day, our body says, it's the middle of the day, we should be really awake right now, and we should not produce any melatonin, and we should do that later. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's great. But when you're working shifts, your body is not in the same time zone as the natural daylight. So when you're driving home after a night shift, it's likely that the sun is coming up or the sun is up already, and you're seeing a lot of bright light. Maybe you're walking to the bus stop or you're driving home, you're flooding your eyes with loads of bright light, which is telling your brain, hey, look, it's really light. It's the middle of the day. Look how early it is. We need to wake up. And your body is going to actively stop producing melatonin, which is going to make sleep harder. So it's really important to just wear shades. It's the easiest thing in the world. Wear sunglasses on the way home. If you are if you're a pilot or you're airplane crew, then put the blinds down on the bus to the hotel. Just keep yourself as dark as possible before you get home to go to bed, because that's going to help your brain know that it's nighttime, your nighttime. And invest in some really good curtains, maybe an eye mask and some earplugs, just to keep all those distraction, vision and noise away, which is easy when you're going to bed at a normal time, 10, 11 o'clock at night. But when the kids are going to school, there's a sort of noise, it can be really hard to sleep. And also I would suggest having something to eat just before you go to sleep so that you don't wake up hungry after a few hours. So have a little bit of food, a little bit of drink of water, keep your room really dark and go to sleep. And another thing that's quite important about shift work is that we don't have to sleep in one block. I mean, the whole adults should get statistically between 7 and 9 hours sleep in a 24-hour period. That doesn't have to be in one block. And it's really important for shift workers, because maybe you get home and you have a 4-hour sleep, and then you get up maybe to go and do the shopping or see to the kids or do something like that. And then you could have another block of sleep before your next shift. So as long as you're getting ideally 7 to 9 hours sleep in a 24-hour period, it doesn't have to be in one block. So that's a really useful tip as well.
Great. Gosh, there's lots of tips in there, aren't there? But highlighting the importance of light is really, really important, isn't it? And I probably don't see lots of people wearing shades on the way home from night work. And it's a simple thing. And they shouldn't they? It's so important to just allow your brain to recognize that the difference between night and day. And do you think there's a bit of a flip side to that? So again, back to kind of what employers could be doing as well, is making sure that the environment is really bright. Your working environment is really bright, so that when you're working, there's the brightness. And when you leave work, you can really notice the difference between the light and the dark, because it's that difference as well that the brain needs to clock, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you're working a night shift, say, now it's difficult because just normal overhead indoor lighting doesn't have the brightness that we need to sort of trigger our brains to know that it's bright sunshine. So you can get things like SAD lamps or artificial bright light sources. Even some companies that I work with install lighting that gets increasingly bright during the middle of the shift and then starts to diminish again. And that's really brilliant. So if you can have really bright light in the middle of your shift, that will help you to be really, really alert. So if you do have the ability to stick an SAD lamp on, which has the bright artificial light in the middle of your shift, that's going to really increase your alertness. And then you can turn that off and mimic the sun setting and mimic the increase in darkness towards the evening.
Great. Yeah, there's gadgets and things that can help with that as well, aren't there? So So there's a bit of an interesting concept there, because again, when you think about shift work, many of us do shift work that doesn't feel very natural, but there are also some very natural morning larks and night owls, aren't there, in terms of back to what you're talking about, our circadian rhythms and our kind of natural tendencies. Do you see that there is a place, now that we're sort of very much also working from home, there's a lot of hybrid working even with shift work as well, do you think there's a place for employers to know the natural patterns of their employees, or for us as individuals to know, and really then kind of zone in our patterns of work to what is very natural to our rhythms. I would love to see a time when that actually happened, because you're getting the best productivity out of yourself. You're getting the best feel good out of your working day as well. What are your views? I'd love to know.
Yeah, definitely. So larks and owls. So larks are people who generally tend to wake up early and they feel really ready to go, but then they start to feel sleepy quite early in the evening and they'll want to go to bed early. Owls are the opposite. They're the ones who struggle to get out of bed in the morning, but then come the evening, they're on fire, they're really full of energy, and going to bed, they don't want to go to bed, they want to stay up late. Now, generally, owls tend to not get as much sleep as larks because society, up until this point, has been geared up for larks. You know, the 9 to 5 society is brilliant for larks because they get up and they go to work and they go home and go to bed. But owls, they can really struggle. But with the COVID crisis and working from home and flexible working, it's really changed that. So it means that larks, they can even start work even earlier. But whereas owls, they can maybe start work at 10 or 11 or even later, and they can work until the evening when they're feeling full of productivity, full of alertness, their best, without having to drag themselves out of bed at 6, 7 to get the train to work. Mm-hmm. So if you are someone who is really feeling like you're a lark, it's a really good idea to get your really difficult tasks of the day first thing in the morning when you're feeling your most alertness. But whereas for owls, and I'm a massive owl personally, you know, the thought of doing something really taxing first thing in the morning is just like hell to me. You know, so therefore owls do the really easy stuff first thing in the morning. And as the afternoon, even evening comes along, when you're feeling really alert, that's when you can tackle those really difficult tax returns and the stuff that you need to use your brain for.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of just being aware of your own style and knowing your own productivity peaks. I think that's so important, isn't it? And probably also worthy of conversation with your managers or with your employers. If you are really struggling with your work, it may be as something as natural as your natural rhythm that's playing a part in that. And just to have that very open conversation with your employers to suggest that perhaps you do start work later and can work later. Perhaps meetings are held at different times, because you're right, that societal 9 to 5 really kind of excludes, it's almost 30% of the population that are night owls like yourself, isn't it? So, and that's a significant burden, I think, for a lot of people, especially when you consider the long-term effect of having less sleep, because society deems that night owls need to conform, and all those effects on sort of cognitive performance and memory later on, as well as things like, we know, heart disease and diabetes, etc. So I think that's so important. Thank you for highlighting.
I think, you know, I find it important to think about evolutionarily. There's a good reason that we have larks and owls, because when we were cavemen, we needed to have people to guard the cave throughout the night. So you need people who get up really early, and then you need people who go to bed very late, so that there's always someone watching. So if you are an owl, don't feel bad. You know, we're playing a really important role in society, even if it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely love that. You know, stand guard at the cave, and we are a 24/7 world now, aren't we? So even more important to kind of recognise your place in that, whether that's night, day, or something in between. I think finally, Lindsay, could you just give a little bit of support for parents out there who probably are with newborns, with little ones, perhaps working some kind of shift in terms of, it's not their own rhythms that they're tuning into, but it's the rhythms of their new baby. And again, when you think again about long-term effects on health, a lot of parents can be really worried about their own health going forward if they aren't able to sleep well. Do you have any advice for parents with young babies?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is that when you're a new parent, you're probably not going to be getting 7 to 9 hours sleep in a 24-hour period, which is what you should be getting to be really healthy. However, if it was that black and white, that bad to not get enough sleep, and then instantly you'll have all these terrible health problems, then every new parent on the planet would be doomed. You know, most of us on the planet have at one point in time been a new parent. So just cut yourself a bit of slack would be my first thing to say. Secondly, yes, if you want to try and catch up on some sleep, have a nap. You know, naps can be your excellent friend. There is nothing wrong with having a nap if you're not getting enough sleep during the night because you're being woken up by a baby, or woken up by an elderly relative with dementia, or the roof just collapsed in the middle of the night. There are loads of reasons that you aren't getting enough sleep during the night, in which case, take a nap. And, as I said, with the shift work thing, you don't have to get the 7 to 9 hours in one block. You can, take it in turns. Maybe if you have a young baby, with your partner and yourself, if you have a partner, one of you go to bed early, the other one puts the baby to bed, and then the other one does the early shift, so that you're sort of taking a tag team approach so that you both are getting enough sleep.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's okay. Just take the pressure off a bit. It's okay. There's the longer term consequences are not going to be there because you've had a rough year with your newborn, getting them settled, right? So that's so important.
And now, here is your lifestyle first prescription. Your 3 activating actions to take you from knowing to doing.
3 actions that our listeners can take to really help to adjust sleep patterns to fit with shift work patterns. Back to that original question, what can people do?
Yeah, sure. I think, as you said, being aware of lighting is really important. So if you are working night shifts, just before your shift, make sure that you've got all the lights on. During the shift, try and get as much light exposure as you can. And then as the shift ends, decrease that lighting. That is really, really important. Take a prophylactic nap before work. So that means just before you go to your night shift, like an hour and a half before, take a little top-up nap, just to top up that bit of sleep so that when you're on your shift, your sleep drive, your need for sleep isn't as big as it would have been. So just topping up that sleep through the day is really, really helpful. And also talk to your family realistically about the demands of shift work, because I see so many people working shifts who are trying to do everything. They're working a night shift and also taking the children to school, also going into school to help their child with their reading for an hour, picking the kids up from school, doing some shopping, and just not prioritizing their sleep. So talk to your family, help them to understand that you do need sometimes to not attend that the reading with the child, or maybe you might miss a sports day because you do need to sleep during the day, and that's not you being lazy. That's you taking the biological need of needing sleep so that you can be your best during the night.
Wonderful. Thank you. Those are 3 really, really important and relatively easy to implement actions, I think, particularly the idea of light and get those shades on, right? That's absolutely great. Thank you. I'm sure people will have more questions, perhaps want to find out more about your own work, and even reach out for some support for themselves. So what's the best place to find you, Lindsay?
Sure. My website is troublesleeping.co.uk, and I'm on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Dr Browning Sleep. That's at Dr Browning Sleep. And I've got a monthly newsletter you can sign up for, and also you can read my book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I certainly would recommend your book to everybody listening today. And I'll put all those links up on the notes as well for everybody to be able to stay in touch. So thank you so much, Lindsay. Been really insightful and very, very helpful. Fantastic tips. Thank you so much, which simply leaves me to wish everybody a happy, healthy day.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast, making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe and share. And we'd love it if you'd be kind enough to leave a review. To learn more or to arrange a consultation, please visit www.dralkapatel.com. See you next time.